It was early morning just before sunrise when Oberleutnant Franz Keller caught the first signal. A sharp burst of Morse code cracked through the cockpit of his Messerschmitt, the rhythm so precise and familiar that his instincts responded before his thoughts did. It was a Luftwaffe distress pattern, the kind that meant a friendly pilot was in serious trouble. Keller pushed the throttle forward, banking toward the source as the faint outline of another German aircraft broke through the haze below. But something was wrong. The ground batteries lining the coast should have recognized the code instantly. Instead, Keller watched a sudden glitter of movement, then a full eruption of tracer fire. Lines of burning light tore upward, striking the struggling German plane as if it were an intruder. Keller shouted into his radio, demanding the batteries hold their fire, but the only reply was more confusion. Operators insisted the distress signal had not matched any registered aircraft. What Keller heard in his headphones and what the gunners believed were two different realities. Miles away, hidden inside a darkened Allied signal truck, Lieutenant Arthur Cole listened with steady hands on his headphones. The deception was working. A single borrowed rhythm, broadcast on a German blind spot frequency, had turned the Luftwaffe against itself. If you want more stories like this, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And keep watching. What happens next reveals just how close this trick came to collapsing the German air defense network. Franz Keller had flown long enough to trust the patterns of the Luftwaffe's radio world the way other men trusted their own heartbeat. Every pilot was trained from the first day to recognize the cadence of German Morse, the clipped identifiers, the rising urgency in distress calls, the precise spacing that distinguished one wing from another. It was a system built on rhythm, discipline, and absolute confidence. But in the late months of 1943, that confidence was beginning to fracture. Official briefings blamed recent friendly fire incidents on malfunctioning equipment. Officers insisted that ground crews had misread codes or that pilots had flown off assigned routes. Keller heard the excuses, but what he saw in the sky told a different story. His fellow pilots were following procedure. Something else was slipping into their frequencies, something they could not understand. Across enemy lines, Lieutenant Arthur Cole had pieced together the missing explanation. As part of an Allied signals unit assigned to monitor German communications, he spent weeks studying Luftwaffe transmissions. Between the coded bursts, he noticed something Germany had dismissed: a narrow band of frequencies considered unusable because of industrial interference around major cities. But from positions behind German lines, those same blind spots cleared into perfect channels. Cole's team realized they could mimic real Luftwaffe signals without detection, so long as they captured enough authentic transmissions to match the timing. Their forward post, an unmarked truck in dense woodland, became a factory for deception, and Keller, still unaware of their existence, had already flown into its consequences. German signals posts were the first to sense that something did not fit. Operators reviewing nightly logs noticed minute inconsistencies in the distress calls. Hesitation where there should have been none, timing that was nearly perfect, but not quite as machine-steady as the Luftwaffe's automated encoders. At first, these anomalies were dismissed as pilot error or atmospheric interference, but when the pattern repeated across multiple regions, the whispers inside command posts grew louder. Someone, or something, was imitating them. Keller heard the rumors while standing in a dimly lit operations hut, listening to his squadron commander argue with intelligence officers. The officers insisted that no enemy device could replicate the encryption cadence of German signals. Yet Keller had witnessed it firsthand, a distress call that sounded authentic, followed by gunners who swore it did not exist. He left the meeting with a knot growing in his stomach. Behind the front, inside the Allied truck hidden beneath layers of camouflage netting, Arthur Cole monitored the tightening German response. His small team recorded real Luftwaffe traffic, analyzing spacing, pitch, and the subtle imperfections of each operator. By reproducing those tiny human fingerprints, they tricked German posts into believing the transmissions came from the sky rather than the forest floor. Cole watched the consequences unfold through intercepted chatter, batteries firing at shapes they could not identify, pilots arguing over codes, command centers scrambling for explanations. Every successful deception struck deeper into the Luftwaffe's trust in its own system. Then came the message he expected, but dreaded. German intelligence had begun triangulating the unknown transmitter. The order reached Keller's airfield just after midday. A mobile radio tracking unit was being deployed to locate an unidentified transmitter believed to be imitating Luftwaffe distress signals. Keller and 2 other pilots were assigned to protect the truck from Allied aircraft during its search. The implications were clear. Whatever was causing the chaos was no longer considered an internal malfunction. Someone was hunting the German network from the shadows. The tracking crew worked with disciplined precision. Their truck, packed with directional antennas and oscilloscopes, could rotate its masts in slow arcs, measuring the strength of every suspicious Morse burst. Each time the unknown signal appeared, the men swung the dials toward the source, marking bearings on a growing map covered in pencil lines. Hours passed as the crew refined their estimates, drawing intersecting angles that narrowed to a dense, forested region behind the lines. High above them, Keller flew protective loops, scanning the treetops as the search tightened. He had never imagined the enemy would risk placing a transmitter so far forward. The thought left him uneasy. Whoever operated it had to be confident, skilled, and dangerously close. Inside the Allied truck, hidden in that very forest, Arthur Cole felt the pressure closing in. His team had only minutes between transmissions to relocate the vehicle, rolling slowly along unpaved trails to avoid leaving a detectable pattern. Each fake distress call carried new risk. Every broadcast was a flare in the dark. Cole debated shutting down the operation entirely, but one final transmission might buy the Allies a crucial advantage. He keyed the signal. The final transmission was the one that sealed their location. As Arthur Cole released the last carefully crafted distress pattern, the German tracking truck caught a clean, stable reading. The oscilloscopes flared upward in sharp peaks, and the directional antennas locked instantaneously. The crew shouted coordinates, marking a tight circle on the map that lay barely a few kilometers from their current route. For the first time in weeks, they had a definitive source. Ground troops moved immediately. A detachment of infantry was dispatched toward the forest, while Keller and his escorts flew overhead to prevent any Allied aircraft from disrupting the search. From above, Keller watched the soldiers fan out beneath the trees, forming overlapping lines that swept through the underbrush with methodical precision. Inside the Allied truck, Cole had already sensed that the game was over. The last signal had lingered a fraction too long. He ordered his team to pull the cables, burn the sensitive notes, and prepare to abandon the vehicle. Their extraction route had been planned in advance, a narrow creek bed that led to a secondary pickup point kilometers away. Every man carried only what he could run with. Minutes later, German soldiers reached the clearing. They found the unmarked truck exactly where the signals had pointed. The doors hung open. Headphones swayed gently from a hook. The transmitter hummed on an empty bench, its valves still warm. To the tracking crew, it was as if the operators had vanished into the trees. Keller stared at the silent truck below, realizing he had flown within sight of the enemy he hunted. The investigation that followed could only confirm fragments of the truth. German intelligence determined that the transmitter matched no known Allied design and that the operators had reproduced Luftwaffe Morse patterns with a precision that should have been impossible. Reports described the deception as a temporary breach in trust, a phrase that did little to capture the confusion and fear it caused. For weeks afterward, air defense crews double-checked every signal. Pilots hesitated before responding to distress calls, and confidence in the radio identification system remained shaken. A war built on speed had been briefly slowed by doubt. For Franz Keller, the memory endured far longer than the official findings. The image of a friendly aircraft falling under its own protection haunted him, a reminder that the battlefield could twist even the most disciplined systems against themselves. He spoke little about that period after the war, but those who knew him said he never again trusted a signal without looking twice. Arthur Cole lived with his own weight. From a hidden corner of the conflict, he had watched a carefully crafted rhythm cause deadly consequences. The operation saved Allied lives and disrupted German defenses, yet Cole understood the moral edge he had crossed, the power to turn trust into a weapon. He carried that knowledge into the years that followed, long after the signals fell silent. The forest where the truck once stood is quiet now, but for a brief moment in wartime, a simple sequence of dots and dashes changed everything.